OtraXFavor. This is one more, please. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Otra, por favor. Actually, it's a different type of format we're doing today, and sort of a last-minute collaboration. Today in the studio, I have the honor of featuring a director that is very talented, but also just released an amazing film. His name is Adrián Alejandro Arredondo. Adrian, can you introduce yourself to the audience and give us a little bit more about you and who you are and how did your... First of all, let's start with how are you doing today?
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me in your Easy Tiger studio. This is a really nice place to have this conversation with you. My name is Adrián Alejandro Arredondo. I am a filmmaker from South Texas, originally from Mexico. My family immigrated to Texas when I was very young, and so I sort of grew up moving between Texas and Mexico, more specifically McAllen, Texas, and Reynosa, Tamaulipas. So my upbringing is completely informed by a border culture, Mexican-American culture, and at this point in my life, the movies that I make and the media that I create are a reflection of my history, my past, and my culture. So the movie that I had at Cine Las Americas, it's called Take It Away, The Rise and Fall of Tejano Hollywood, and it is a film about Tejano music, Mexican-American culture, immigration politics, and the beauty that when you combine them, gives to the world. So again, thank you for having me here.
Oh no, thank you, man. It's so for the audience will know is we're going to be part of the different pathways of filmmaking panel at Cine Las Americas Festival this year. We're actually going to be doing it right after this interview, but we were able to connect. You came to me and said hi. For me, that's I appreciate that part. You introduced yourself, but also one thing that I wanted to mention is what you did. It's gonna have what I would say a beginning of something that it's already here, but it needed to be visual. And a lot of it is probably just a connection of what Tejano music has been in Texas, but not just so people can see it here, but also people can see it other parts of, not from Texas. Mm-hmm. Tejano music, as we know, it's from Texas. It originated here, and you as Tejano, you got to experience all of that growing up. So for you, how was that like as a Tejano? How was that, learning about the culture first and then doing a documentary about it?
Of course. It's a great question. So Tejano as a musical genre is very interesting, I think not just to me, but to a lot of people, because for some reason, outside of Texas, people don't take it so serious. Mm-hmm. You have infinite musical genres, right? You have classical music, mm-hmm. accepted worldwide. You have rock and roll music accepted worldwide. You have hip hop accepted worldwide. And for some reason, the genre, just because it's named Tejano, is not accepted worldwide. Mm-hmm. And there is some type of, I believe, mental block that people have. And maybe it's because Texas and Tejanos mm-hmm. Have this... I believe that Texas generally has this sort of independent attitude, right? We have a history of wanting to be independent from other states, having our own attitude, having our own economy. We have the biggest and the baddest this and that. Yeah. And I think that turns off a lot of people. Yeah. And so when you try to escape that, a lot of people kind of have this little awareness where they're like, no, you guys wanted to be on your own, so we're gonna leave you there. And I didn't start feeling that until after I went to film school and I moved out of Texas. I moved from Austin, Texas, where I studied filmmaking at the University of Texas. I moved to New York City, and it was very eye-opening to see that nobody was looking at us. Nobody was, especially when I say us, I mean the Valley. I mean South Texas. Yeah. But the influences in culture, media, fashion were there. People were taking them, but no one was acknowledging where it actually came from. Yeah. Then I moved to Los Angeles, and in LA you have a really big Chicano culture and Mexican-American culture, but the thinking is very different as well. The music is a little different. It's more hip hop. It's a little bit more they have their own sort of vibe out there. Mm-hmm. And again, I was feeling like there was a ton of Tejano influence, but it wasn't being acknowledged. So that really motivated me to create something like this movie to show audiences outside of Texas the truth, which is that the Valley, South Texas, Mexican Americans, and Tejano music very specifically was peak pop music for a long, long time in the 80s and the 90s, really up until the 2000s, right? And it was, a lot of people think the music of our parents or like our grandparents, but if you look at the music charts today, Latin music is number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 10, right? We're like dominating airplay all over the world. And Tejano artists are up there as well. Grupo Frontera. Right now you have like Fuerza Regida, and they're Mexican regional, but Mexican regional is inspired by Tejano music. And people like Johnny Canales, people like Michael Salgado, Bobby Pulido, Selena, they paved the way for this like Latin explosion today. So I was really inspired to create a film that would contextualize that sort of gap between 1998 to today, and to show the world, and specifically non-Latino audiences, where the fashion, the music, and like the vibe that everyone loves today actually comes from, and it comes from South Texas.
It's like when I think of Tejano, right? I mean, cowboy, vaquero. Cowboys came from vaqueros.
Yes.
So it's not just when you go to an event, we're gonna go to Tejano de Lord. No, it's actually a everyday thing in Texas.
Yeah.
So one thing that I really liked about the documentary is how you were able to go back to the roots of not just how it started, but also who gave it the exposure, which was Johnny Canales, who's I never knew about him until recently. So hearing that, I'm like, man, what the hell? Where have I been? Like, I've been in Texas for so long, 24 years, and I just now learned of Johnny Canales. You got a chance to record with him. He's in a documentary, talked about his experience, in Johnny World, and putting everything, giving exposure to artists, Tejano artists, and then how he went to Mexico and it became a little more corporate and whatnot. But for you, seeing him talk about that part of Tejano music, and he had a platform for it, and then him talking about it in your documentary, how was that like for you? How was that experience? Because it's something that it's always going to stay with you forever.
It will stay with me forever. I thank you for asking that and for giving all that information. So Johnny will stay with me forever. He did pass away last year, and as we were making the movie, it took 5 years to make the film, right? So I always had been aware of Johnny growing up in South Texas, of his television show, of his impact. But again, once I left Texas, it felt to me, and it was very apparent, that his impact was waning. It was getting lost, and it wasn't being acknowledged, respected, or celebrated. And to me, that felt like dishonest, sort of. It just felt dishonest to what our actual reality is today, right? Knowing, I felt like I was this person, like a crazy person. I'm like, I'm seeing this, it's so obviously blatant to me, but for some reason the world likes to move on so fast, and the world used to be a little slower before technology, and Johnny Canales had 30 years where he was pretty much the only platform that was available to Latin artists for television, for international, global. Today we say streaming. Back then we would say just a platform on television, right? Mm-hmm. And in the film, when we very first started 5 years ago, I arrive at Johnny Canales' house, shake his hand, introduce myself, and we're strangers. We've had a few phone calls, right? But most of the production, I had been communicating with Nora Canales, his wife, and his daughters. But so I'm on the phone with Nora for a long time, and then I finally get there and I meet Johnny. And at this point, Johnny's already a little bit older. He already had some health issues. He's no longer making the show. So he was very excited to have me and my team and I in his home, just there to celebrate his legacy, So he was very open to telling us his story, telling us the truth about some of the behind the scenes, giving us information like the fact that he never got paid, he never made money, the fact he told us all about his relationship with Selena, he told us all about his relationship with how artists would approach him, how he would approach the networks, how he moved around from being a touring musician to then being a DJ, to then being on the radio, to then being having a short form TV show, then having a long form TV show, then having a globally syndicated TV show. You know, over the course of 30 years, he went from being he started working in the fields. Like, he went from being a migrant worker to being a superstar in television. And to me, that is the American dream, you know?
Yeah.
And I went into it thinking like, oh, I'm here to celebrate a hero. But then the more I got to know him in his story, I started to sort of see the truth of how the world was treating him. And it's like, oh, I don't have to celebrate a hero. I have to celebrate the whole culture and everything that he built, and let people know that he still exists. Like, the man's still alive. Yeah. The man is still, it's all here. So it was incredible to get to know him. He was charming. He was funny. He was very loving. Exactly who he was on TV is exactly who he was in person. And as a director, that was almost even surprising for me, because I was going into this initially thinking like, let me discover who this man really is. Let me bring out some things that the world doesn't know. Let me present a different side of him. The more I got to know him, the more I realized, like, no, who he is on TV is exactly who he is in person. Yeah. There's nothing left to discover about this man, because he really gave it all to you. Yeah. His wedding was televised. His children were backstage. His family was a part of the crew. They would shoot out of a studio in his house that they built in the backyard. You know, he put it all out there. And once I sort of discovered that, I was like, okay, maybe his character arc in the sense of the movie has already sort of been explored and it's out there. Then the conversation started to go into talk to me about all of the other characters, right? Selena Salgado, Bobby Pulido, Nora, the networks, the good, the bad, the ugly, and that's when the story really started to unfold. But I'm very grateful to have spent a lot of time with him in his home.
That's good. In these 5 years, you got to get to know Johnny in a personal level, and then you also got to know Bobby Pulido and Michael Salgado and his wife Nora. They're also, I mean, Bobby Pulido is stable, you know, in Tejano music. So getting that part, I mean, you got to see, you know, of course Johnny, but also got to work with Bobby and Michael Salgado. How was that like for you, especially as a director? Because they were open to doing this documentary and talking about a lot of the stuff, like say, and I'm not gonna keep too much of the documentary, but just one part that I want to highlight is just how Bobby mentioned that there's a times that Johnny Canales went one route and they didn't get invited for so long, and I feel like that kind of changed, you know, eventually where the world was going regarding Tejano music. But you seen him talking about the good, but also the bad parts of, you know, everything that happened. How was it for you as a director?
It was like thrilling, you know, when as a director going into this film with theories and ideas that I have what's the word? I have like hunches, you know, and I have a personal experience from growing up in the Valley. So it's interesting. Like, we started the film knowing that we were going to tell the story of the rise and the fall of Tejano Hollywood. Yeah. And we knew that the general structure of the movie had to be explosive up until the middle. Then there had to be a turning point, and then it had to, there had to be an impasse, and there had to be obstacles. And we knew that Tejano disappeared, but we didn't exactly know why. Yeah. And so we researched, and meeting Bobby, meeting Michael, I went in with a sense of discovery, because I did not have the answers, right? But I knew that just through watching all of the Johnny Canales shows and researching his tapes, in the first 15 years, they're all over the episodes, and then they disappear, but the show continues, right? And as I'm interviewing other artists as well, like Sunny Osuna, like Veronique Medrano, some classic artists and some contemporary artists, I interviewed them prior to the Salgado and Pulido. A lot of my interviews are research as well, right? And they start telling us, well, you know, like Johnny used to invite us, and then he stopped once Regional Mexican started to come up, yeah. Or once Telemundo came in and started buying up the other networks. It had nothing to do with Johnny Canales. It had everything to do with the audiences that the networks were deciding to pursue. And then eventually, you know, I get to a conversation with Bobby Pulido after having all of this research done already, and then I can go in with very pointed questions, and he sort of like fills in the answers. And I knew that Bobby had sort of disappeared from the show for some reason, but I didn't know why, right? So then I asked him why, and he tells us, oh, it was because this massive wave of Mexican immigration. It's because Telemundo bought all the radio stations and they didn't want Tejano anymore. It's because technology and the internet arrived, and nobody had to watch Johnny on Sunday to discover artists anymore. They could go to, you know, LimeWire, Kazaa, ShareBear, Spotify, Apple, Amazon eventually, and they could just start finding new artists, and the world just kind of moved on. And the wave changed, and interest just changed, but a lot of it all just kind of coincided at the same time, you know. Technology, Johnny's health, Selena's death, the passing of telecommunications and networks being bought, all happened within like 4 years. So it was just this massive shift that Tejano was not ready for, and it changed the face of it. And it took a good 20 years, like until today, for it to come back in a fresh way. So, you know, just to answer the question, a lot of it, I didn't have the answers. I had to do a lot of research by watching the show and by meeting people in Texas and just asking them, like, what happened? You know, like, I know this, and this, or I saw this episode. Can you fill in the blanks for me? But after doing that for 3-4 years, I become sort of an expert. And then Bobby Pulido was the very last interview that we did for the film. And at this point, I have 4 years of research under my belt.
It was easier.
So I could talk to him about every episode, every moment, every song, and I know for a fact what happened, and then I drive the interview that way. With Michael Salgado and his family, it was a little bit different, because in the film we spent time with his entire family, not just one artist, and he invited us into his home. We had a big barbecue. We had impromptu performances in his backyard in the film. He plays a lot of music, and they're personally some of my favorite moments of the film, where Michael's playing just casually in his backyard with his brother, with his cousins, with his daughters aren't sitting on his lap. You know, it's very tender, and to me that feels like it embodies the spirit of Texas. So it was a little bit of research, a little bit of
una carnita asada.
yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was a carne asada in Michael Salgado's backyard.
Yeah.
And also too, it's you have to build. Tejanos are a little bit protective, right? They're a little bit they're super nice, some of the nicest people in the world, but to really let you into their homes, it's not like that easy of a thing. So I had to build relationships with them, and it took time to achieve those like successful interviews where they really will divulge things that people don't know.
You were able to sort of little by little.
Yeah.
And I think I've never done film, right? But I always think for stuff like this is you becoming, I don't know if it's close friends, but at least acquainted with them, actually caring about their story, not just I'm gonna do it for the film, but more I'm gonna do it because it's part of me also. I want to share it.
Of course.
That kind of helps, and it gives it a different feeling, because then you already know, okay, I've been in this situation, I've experienced it, but I want to know more about it. And how you mentioned, after 3-4 years, you got to do your research, and now you ask Bobby Pulido to connect the dots. That kind of helped for the final edit of your documentary, because for someone that, like, say for example, I grew up in Mexico City, but I've been in Texas for 24 years. I sort of sometimes, you know, I'm a Tejano in quotations, but I'm still from Mexico City. I'm from all over the place. So how can I connect to a place where I've lived for so long? And I feel like stuff like this helps me connect it, because I lived it, not just me like seeing it, but also through my friends who are Tejanos, who are from here. And that's for someone who's you know, wanting to embrace this culture. It's, you know, having this type of documentaries helps us, because then, oh, actually I'm part of it. You
are part of it.
Yeah, even if it's indirectly, I'm still part of it. But the one thing that I also wanted to mention is the reception of the people when it was released. Like, I'm pretty sure there was a couple of tears, but for you, seeing people's reaction, everyone, there was an artist that comes out, there was someone that comes out. How was that for you? Like, seeing that, like,
it's amazing. Honestly, the reception of it, the audiences has been amazing, mind-blowing, like unexpected. You know, when I'm working on the movie, we're working on the edit or on set, interviewing. It's a very isolated process. You know, we're like in ranches in small towns in Texas, and it's a small crew of us, 2-3 people, and it's also an independent film, right? So it's not like we have a publicist, a press, or anybody showing us how to do it, telling us what to do, asking us to do it, paying us to do it. We're just also discovering as we're doing it. So for a long time, it felt very isolated, and I'm just wondering in the back of my head, well, will people like it? But also having that like belief that I'm like, it's essential, it's necessary. It doesn't matter if people like it. It just needs to be. It needs to belong, and it needs to be created. I can't believe it hasn't already been created, right? So even during the edit, it's like I've had only ever seen the movie on my laptop, you know, with headphones on, like in my living room or with friends and our editors in LA. It's maybe 20 people that have been working on this, like, and actually have experienced it. Showing it in a theater in front of audience. In Dallas, we had 150 people. In Austin, we had 250 people. I can't believe how funny the movie is. Like, I knew it was gonna be emotional.
It makes you laugh too.
I made like, I'm an emotional person and I make emotional things. And when people watch it, a lot of people cry because there's life and death, and there's very hard truths that you hear and, you know, we present. So I fully was aware, and I was aiming for the heart. But my surprise was that so many people laugh. They have such a good time watching the movie, and that's because Johnny Canales is so funny. Yeah. And I think over making the thing for 5 years, I get desensitized to watching the same clips over and over. So when I first started watching it, it was really funny to me. But now, after years of watching the edit 200 times, a lot of that humor, I think I just got a little used to it. But being in a room, I was like, oh my God, I kind of made a comedy. Like, I kind of made a musical. Yeah. So many people sing along with the movie.
I heard that, yeah.
Right? Like, because you have Ramon Ayala, you have Michael Salgado, Bobby Pulido, you have Selena, and we present those songs, and we made the conscious decision to let those songs live in the archival of the movie. Like, we play for 30-45 seconds, right? And it's not like we just play 5 seconds and you cut. We let people sit with the music. Also Intocable, Sunny Osuna, and in the theaters, people sing the songs out loud while they're watching the movie. Yeah. It feels like I'm in a musical that someone has already seen 30 times, like The Phantom of the Opera or Rent, you know, where on Broadway, where the audiences will sing along with the actors. The audience sings along with the musicians on TV, and in that sense, it feels really powerful because I feel like it belongs to everyone. I'm just putting it there, you know, and I recognize that there are a lot of people who know this better than I do. You know, I don't know the songs like the way that the audiences do when they sing them. So it's been really, really beautiful and powerful. And then the last thing I'll say to that is, so many people that are like multicultural, that have different identities, from Mexico, from America. At this last screening, a woman from Japan came to me after the show, and she was telling me that she's Japanese and her husband is half Anglo, half Hispanic, and their son is Japanese, Anglo, Hispanic, and he has a perspective of his identity that he can't share with a lot of people. Right. And so he feels a little bit lonely sometimes, but watching the movie and watching the story of Johnny and watching a filmmaker make something that speaks to the multicultural person is very powerful. And everyone's like, I feel so seen, I feel so excited, because most of the things that we watch don't represent us, and this represents us very well. So I'm very proud of that.
It's crazy because, I mean, with now it's sort of picking up, and it's sort of having more exposure, Tejano music, and technology is helping it reach that level. For example, like in Vietnam, there's a huge Cholo culture over there. Yeah. And I mean, because of Grupo Frontera in Selena, how many people from other parts of the world are listening to Tejano music? And I feel like now it's sort of having a comeback, because the newer generation were able to, one, keep the music alive, and now it's there. Now it's there for people to enjoy it in parties. You go to a quinceañera, a wedding in Texas, everybody plays Tejano music. Even if you're, it could be one or two songs, but even if you're, no matter what race you're from, But also you've seen a lot of like say different ethnicities, you know, like for example the woman who's Japanese, her husband is white and their son is like mixed. Now you're seeing that. Now you're seeing it's touching different levels of experiences, because it's someone who, oh man, I'm 25% Hispanic and 25% Tejano. There's something about it. I'm in there too. Like this is me. So having stuff like this helps to keep the culture going. And I think at the end of the day, for film, for it could be podcasts, it could be photography. It's keeping culture alive. It's keeping traditions alive, but necessarily in a religious way. But it's more like keeping you alive, whatever you grew up with alive. And I hope that the documentary gets to a place to where it's a precedent to what's going to happen in the future visually for Tejano filmmakers. I know there's David Lu Garcia who did a Tejano film a couple years ago, and then there's another film that's going to be debuting at the festival this Saturday, and it's about Tejano music. So I think there's still a lot more stories to tell, and I think I appreciate you taking the time and the opportunity to doing that and to bringing it to the audience. Before we close, I wanted to ask you two questions. One is, we always save this question towards the end of the episodes, and for you create something that helps people have a good time because it's film. What do you do to take care of your mental health and take care of that, you know, of Adrian? What do you do to, you know, stay sane and remain sane mentally?
That's a good question. It's hard. Taking care of my mental health can be challenging when I'm making a project for so many years that I mentioned feels very isolating, and there's not a lot of support, there's not a lot of visibility, but there's a big belief that just keep going, and once you finish, the payoff will be there, right? It's like that trope of like jumping into the unknown and not having the fear, because what if it's better than what you think, you know? So over the course of filmmaking, the way I take care of my mental health is primarily, number one, by exercising and being physically just astute, right? I take care of my body as best as I can. Whether I have a job, I don't have a job, I'm making money, I don't have money, I'm making a movie, I'm not making a movie, I have a partner, I don't have a partner, my family's nearby, they're not nearby. Like, I cannot control anything. The only thing that I can control is my perspective and my health. So I prioritize that a lot. And I do that through physical activity, gym, runs, yoga, meditation. I practice a lot of calisthenics. I do handstands, just like I'm really about it, you know?
Yeah.
The other way that I take care of my mental health is by spending a lot of time with my family. I'm very close with my family, my two brothers, my four nieces, my mother. They're all my best friends, you know, and I have lived a lot of different states, and I move around a lot, and I meet a lot of incredible people, but it goes by so fast. It goes by so fast, you know, and a lot of the relationships are transactional. A lot of it has to do only for work. So I've had to get really good at realizing who my friends are, who my friends aren't, and also, like I mentioned, just recognizing that my family is permanent and a part of me, and so they help keep me very grounded and stable. And yeah, that's about. I think those two things help me stay very mentally safe.
If you want some resistance for your calisthenics, I got you.
Yeah.
I work with a company where we sell weighted vests, so
so
send me your address.
I will. That'd be great. I would love that.